How's it going, creators? In today's video, I'm going to be talking about whether the Panasonic GH5 is or is not a good camera for you in 2020 and beyond. As someone who's used this camera religiously for 3+ years, I'm going to be giving you 3 pros and 3 cons about this camera, given the current market and how many options are out there. If you've been following my channel for a minute, you know that I haven't posted videos in months. I kind of announced I was switching channels. Long story short, this is my first video back and I'm super stoked. I just missed it way too much, so without further ado, let's get into the first pro for the GH5. Pro or advantage number 1 that the GH5 has over any other camera in the market, in my opinion, is the value for the specs you are getting, the price for the package that you're getting with this camera. Just because it is not the latest, newest camera by no means that it's a bad camera. The GH5 spits out 4K high quality video in 10-bit 422 color. We're talking 4K 60 slow-mo and insane in-body stabilization that most other new cameras don't even have. To give you an example of the value you're getting with this camera for the price, you can pick up a used GH5 pretty easily for $1,500 or less on something like eBay, Facebook Marketplace, or Craigslist. To compare that to the A7S III by Sony that just came out, where the body comes in at $3,500 plus tax, brand new, you're getting an amazing package here for so much less money. For $1,500, you could probably even get the GH5 used with a lens like my favorite one for this camera, the Sigma 18-35 f1.8. $1,500 for a body and a lens that puts out this type of quality is just mind-blowing. Anyone that says the GH5 is outdated in 2020 is just simply wrong. Now, you might be thinking, what about the Panasonic S5, the brand new Panasonic camera, full frame that came out this year for the same brand new retail price tag as the GH5? First off, you're not going to find one used yet, so you are paying $2,000 plus tax. You still have the ability to buy a GH5 for half the price of that S5. Second, you have to consider the lenses you're going to be putting on that S5. Panasonic's new line of L Leica lenses are much more expensive than micro four thirds lenses. Now, yes, micro four thirds lenses can get expensive, but there are tons of amazing budget options. Really quick, I have a GH5 Pro settings cheat sheet that I want to give you. The link to download that is down in the description, completely for free. I want to help you set up your new camera, this GH5. If you just bought one, maybe if you've owned one for a while, it'll be fun to compare your settings with mine, because there's so many different ways you can configure this camera. As I mentioned earlier, there are lots and lots of micro four thirds lens options at an affordable price. And that is pro number 2 for the GH5, is the lens options. Now, say you do decide to go with the S5 over the GH5. Well, a 16-35 lens, which is comparable to the 18-35 I'm filming on now, starts at around $1,500 for that Panasonic L mount glass. This 18-35 that I'm filming on right now, I picked up used for $500. That's a third of the price, and in my opinion, the same quality. I absolutely love this lens for the GH5. It's been an absolute workhorse for my business, for my travel videos, and for these YouTube videos. Yes, you can always throw an adapter on there and use your Canon glass or whatever glass you have, but you're gonna always lose autofocus performance, and of course that's going to be yet another added cost. The third advantage that the GH5 has over the market of cameras that 2020 has blessed us with is the overall versatility as a video shooter. I'm not focusing on the GH5 as a photography camera in this video. I've talked about that in other videos. I just have a hard time shooting photos with it. But when it comes to video, it has some of the most versatile features in a camera. Let me explain. A lot of the newer mirrorless video cameras that are coming out, and professional cameras too, like cinema cameras, are sort of designed to have one specific purpose. For example, the Sony A7 III is sort of designed to only be a vlogging camera because it doesn't have the high-end pro specs that you need to shoot commercials on, like even the GH5 does. Sure, it might vlog amazingly, but in my opinion, so does the GH5, and it comes in at the same price brand new as the GH5, which what I mentioned earlier, you can pick a GH5 up used for half that price. Another example, the Panasonic S5 or the S1. Both great cameras again, but they're a lot bigger and bulkier than the GH5, so that kind of implies they're not gonna be the best travel vlog cameras, and they're more cinema camera based. Again, GH5 has similar specs and it's in a smaller package. So you can take it on set on a professional commercial, shoot that, and then you can also put it in your bag, go out for the weekend and shoot a travel video. This last example is kind of a ridiculous one, but I felt like I should bring it up anyways. Think about comparing the new Red Komodo. It's about a $6,000 Red body camera that shoots amazing 6K video. Compare that with the GH5. You are not gonna be vlogging on that camera, and if you do, you might just be a little bit insane, and I'd love to see it. But the GH5 video, in my opinion, is totally comparable to the footage that comes out of that $6,000 very impractical camera. I don't want you to think that the GH5 is sort of a camera that does everything okay but nothing really well, because that's just not true. I think the GH5 does most tasks that are built within it pretty darn well. The only thing I really have had issues with in the past is the autofocus, but if we're talking video, most of us are shooting manual anyway, unless we're vlogging or something. All right, maybe you're getting sick of me praising the GH5 and you just want to know what the cons are, because those are equally important and I'm excited to talk about those, so let's dive right in. The downfalls of a camera is extremely personal. It totally depends what you're shooting, what your style is, what you need that tool to do for you. So this is just my own opinion, but my number one con, which I would consider upgrading from this camera in the future, is the lack of depth of field. That's not really a GH5 in particular issue. That's a micro four thirds issue in general. There's tons of micro four thirds cameras, but after shooting on that form factor for a few years now, I'm getting pretty drawn to the full frame look. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, and this is completely going over your head, I am talking about the camera's ability to blur the background behind a subject. The micro four thirds sensor on the GH5 is teeny tiny compared to a full frame, which is about 4 times the size. Without getting technical, a full frame creates a more blurry background. When you're shooting at f1.8 on the GH5, which is what I'm shooting at right now, that's equivalent to f3.6 on a full frame camera. So if having that really blurry, buttery, cinematic bokeh background, that was a lot of B's, if that's really, really important to you, then you might want to consider going full frame or at least APS-C. That being said, the GH5 doesn't do a bad job. I'm exaggerating because this is a review video and I really want to talk about all of my pain points, but it still looks good. As you can tell, it still looks really nice. And if I were to zoom in, I'm only at 18 millimeters right now. If I were to zoom in, it would be even blurrier. So it's really not a huge deal, but it's worth mentioning because it's something that I have struggled with for a little while. The second downfall of the GH5, and what most people would probably rank as their first, is the lack of low light capabilities. Because the sensor is small, it doesn't capture as much light, therefore having pretty bad low light performance. Now, I know everyone always argues, especially on YouTube, over this not being a big deal because people say, oh, your scenes should always be lit properly. When I'm shooting, my scenes are, I place a lot of emphasis on lighting because that's important. More than 50% of the time, I'm running gun shooting. I have to get 50 shots in the time that it might take you to take one of those perfectly lit shots. So I don't have time to set up my lighting, and a lot of the times I don't even have space to set up lighting, so I need a camera that has a little bit better in-camera low light capability. This downfall really comes down to, what type of shooter you are and being self-aware with that. What are you gonna be using this camera for? If you're gonna be on a set, and you can have controlled lighting and you have all the time in the world to make that lighting perfect, you are literally not gonna have a problem at all with the low light on the GH5. If you're someone like me who shoots a lot of run and gun and stuff, for example, weddings, corporate videos, events, things where you don't have time, space, or anything to set up proper lighting, then it can definitely be an issue. My third con with the GH5, and it isn't super applicable to the title of this video because I know we're talking mainly about video, but the third con is that it's not a very good hybrid shooter, a photo and video camera. Again, people will argue this and say, no, the GH5 is totally fine for photos. And they're right, it's not a bad photo camera, but in my personal opinion, my style, I prefer the full frame look when shooting photos. If you're looking for a camera that needs to equally, pretty 50-50, shoot good photos and good videos in this same price range, I would urge you to go check out the Sony a7 III. I'll link the video somewhere up here or down in the description. I have multiple GH5 versus A7 III comparisons. I love both the cameras equally, just for different reasons. So if that's you, check that out. Whew, that was a lot of information. Let's conclude. Now, if you are looking for the best video specs at the best price, the best value, look no further than this GH5. People often think that the price of entering the video production game ends at the camera or maybe the lens. Think again. You have to buy lighting, audio, monitors, tripods, backup drives, computers, the list goes on and on. So maybe if you're on a somewhat tight budget, pick up the GH5 and use that money that you've saved in other areas to make your videos better. Moving forward into the end of 2020 and 2021, will I be keeping the GH5? Drumroll please. Probably not. If you are someone who has been in the game for a while, you have the budget to spend on a newer camera, nicer is probably not the right word, just different features, I would encourage you to look at full frame cameras like maybe the S5, the S1H, the new Sony a7S III, Canon R5, R6. I just have too much of an issue with this Micro Four Thirds sensor after 3 years. I want better low light, I want better depth of field, and I do have the budget for it. So for me, it makes sense. I already own all the other equipment, the computers, the lights, the audio equipment. So for me, it's time to level up my camera. Before I go, I wanted to quickly remind you to take advantage of my GH5 Pro settings. Cheat sheet link is down below. You heard me talk about it earlier, so I don't need to do that again. If you are still here, wow, I praise you in your interest in video production and the GH5. I hope this video helped you decide whether to buy this camera, keep this camera, get rid of it. I hope I influenced your opinion on this camera and somehow and didn't completely waste your time. If you are one of those people, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Like I said earlier in the video, I am back on this channel. I'm super excited to start posting videos. I have so many ideas and videos in the pipeline. So hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell if you don't want to miss that, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.